Okay, so you want to become a dentist. No brutal multi-year residency working 80-hour weeks for $15 an hour. No unpredictable overnight calls. You picture something cleaner, dental school, pass your boards, start practicing, and within a few years, own your own practice, set your own hours, and build the kind of steady, respected small business income that doesn't require you to sacrifice your entire 20s and 30s the way medicine does. It looks like the smarter version of becoming a doctor, most of the prestige and income with a fraction of the training grind. Here's what that picture leaves out. Dental school is, on a per-graduate basis, one of the most expensive professional degrees in the country, frequently more expensive than medical school. There's no residency salary cushioning your transition into repayment, which means the debt hits full force the moment you graduate. And the dream of owning your own practice isn't something dental school hands you. It's a second, separate capital investment, often larger than the one you just took on to become licensed in the first place. Let's start before dental school. Because the admissions arms race here mirrors medicine closely, getting into a dental program requires the dental admission test, the DAT, and most serious applicants prepare using a formal prep course running $500 to $1,500. The application process runs through a centralized service called AADSYS, which charges its own processing fees on top of individual school supplemental application fees. And the average competitive applicant applies to somewhere around 10 to 12 schools, putting total application costs in the $3,000 to $5,000 range before you've been accepted anywhere. Now let's talk about dental school itself, and this is the number that surprises almost everyone who hasn't researched it closely. According to data the American Dental Education Association tracks, the total cost of attendance at a private dental school, tuition, fees, equipment, and instrument costs, and living expenses combined can exceed $400,000 to $500,000 over 4 years. That instrument and equipment cost is unique to dentistry. Unlike medical students, dental students are required to personally purchase or lease a substantial portion of their own clinical instrument kits, handpieces, and diagnostic equipment, a cost that alone can run tens of thousands of dollars on top of tuition. Public dental schools at in-state rates are meaningfully cheaper, typically $250,000 to $300,000 total, but still represent an enormous financial commitment. According to the ADEA's own annual survey data, the average dental school graduate now leaves with over $300,000 in education debt, a figure that has consistently run higher than the average medical school debt figure, even though dentistry doesn't require anywhere near as many years of additional training. Here's the detail that actually cuts in dentistry's favor, at least on the surface. Unlike physicians, general dentists are not required to complete a multi-year residency before practicing independently. After graduating and passing licensing exams, a general dentist can begin practicing and earning a full dentist's income almost immediately. Specialties like oral and maxillofacial surgery, orthodontics, and periodontics do require additional residency training, typically 2 to 6 years. But the majority of dental school graduates who go into general practice skip the multi-year, low-wage training period that defines the physician pathway entirely. That sounds like a clear win. And in terms of time to earning, it genuinely is. But it comes with a hidden cost. Physicians get a multi-year residency during which loan payments can typically be deferred or reduced through income-driven plans, while the debt accrues interest but isn't yet due in full. New dentists, in most cases, walk directly into full standard loan repayment, on a debt balance that's often larger than a doctor's, without that multi-year runway to adjust. Before you can practice at all, there's licensing to clear. Most dentists take the National Board Dental Examination, and then a regional or state clinical licensing exam, historically involving live patient procedures or, increasingly, mannequin-based simulation testing, depending on the jurisdiction. Between exam fees, required travel, and the cost of securing patients or testing materials for the clinical portion, licensing typically runs $1,000 to $3,000+, on top of state licensing application fees that vary by jurisdiction. If you're finding this breakdown useful, hit subscribe. It genuinely helps more people find videos like this one. Now let's talk about the actual fork almost every new dentist faces, because this is where the own your own practice dream either becomes real or stays a dream for a very long time. The overwhelming majority of new dental graduates start their careers as associate dentists, working inside an existing practice rather than owning one. Associates are typically compensated not on a flat salary, but on a percentage of production. Commonly 25% to 30% of what they personally bill and collect, which means income in the first year or two can be inconsistent while you're still building speed, patient trust, and referral volume. Average associate dentist compensation in the first several years typically lands in the $120,000 to $160,000 range. A genuinely solid income, but one that's arriving alongside $300,000 plus in student debt, with no residency-era grace period. To actually own a practice, the dream that drew a lot of people into dentistry in the first place, requires a second, separate, and often larger capital investment. Buying an established, profitable existing practice typically costs $500,000 to over $1,000, priced based on the practice's annual collections, patient base, and equipment condition. Starting a practice completely from scratch instead, new office build-out, dental chairs, x-ray and imaging equipment, sterilization systems, and initial staffing, typically requires $500,000 to $700,000 in startup capital before you've treated a single patient. Most dentists finance this through specialized practice acquisition loans, a lending category that exists specifically because banks recognize dental practices as reliable cash-flowing assets. But stack that financing on top of already carrying $300,000 plus in dental school debt, and it's genuinely common for a new practice-owning dentist in their early 30s to be carrying $800,000 to $2,300,000 plus in combined debt, a number that would alarm most other professionals their age, all financed against the promise of future practice revenue that hasn't been proven yet under new ownership. Once you own the practice, the overhead structure kicks in, and this is the same captive cost pattern we've seen across nearly every business this channel has broken down. Except in dentistry, it consumes an even larger share of revenue than most people expect. Staff costs, hygienists, dental assistants, and front desk administrative staff typically run 25% to 30% of a practice's total collections. Dental equipment isn't a one-time cost either. Digital x-ray systems, sterilization autoclaves, and increasingly, in-office CAD/CAM crown milling machines represent ongoing capital expenditure. With a single modern imaging or milling system running $50,000 to $150,000 plus and requiring periodic replacement or upgrade every several years. Add outside dental lab fees for crowns, bridges, and dentures that the practice doesn't fabricate in-house. And malpractice and general liability insurance running $3,000 to $8,000 annually, depending on procedure scope. And total practice overhead, according to figures the American Dental Association's own economic research tracks, typically consumes somewhere between 60% and 70% of a practice's total collections, a higher overhead ratio than most physician specialties, before the owner dentist takes home $1. And that revenue figure itself is under pressure from a direction most new dentists don't fully appreciate until they're running a practice. Dental insurance PPO networks negotiate fixed fee schedules with participating practices, meaning a procedure billed at one rate might only be reimbursed at 60% to 80% of that rate for an insurance network patient. A write-off the practice simply absorbs. Building and maintaining a patient base willing to pay out of pocket or through more favorable insurance arrangements has become an increasingly central part of running a financially healthy practice, rather than an afterthought. The most instructive trend reshaping dental economics over the past 2 decades isn't a single dramatic collapse. It's a structural shift documented consistently by the American Dental Association's Health Policy Institute. The rise of dental service organizations, DSOs, corporate-backed groups like Heartland Dental and Pacific Dental Services that acquire independent practices and operate them under centralized management, purchasing power, and back-office support. According to the ADA's own tracking, the share of U.S. dentists affiliated with DSO-supported practices has grown substantially over the past 15 years and continues climbing, particularly among newer graduates. The appeal is straightforward. A DSO-affiliated dentist typically earns a percentage of production salary similar to a traditional associate role, but without personally carrying the equipment financing, staffing headaches, or insurance negotiation burden that comes with independent ownership. What they give up is the long-term equity upside, the version of the dream where the practice you built becomes a valuable asset you eventually sell for a substantial payout at retirement. For a growing share of new dentists carrying $300,000 plus in school debt, the guaranteed lower-risk DSO income path has become genuinely more attractive than gambling an additional $700,000 to $1 million on independent ownership. Before that original debt is even under control, the physical risk in this profession is real, even if it's less dramatic than a surgical malpractice claim. According to ergonomic research the American Dental Association has published, Dentistry ranks among the professions with the highest documented rates of repetitive strain injury, chronic back and neck pain, and hand and wrist issues, driven by decades of sustained, precise, close-range physical work in a fixed posture. It's a career-length occupational hazard that doesn't show up on any salary chart, but shows up reliably in every dentist wellness survey the profession conducts on itself. Let's put two outcomes side by side, because the sequencing of your decisions changes this math enormously. Scenario 1, the realistic disciplined outcome. You graduate with $310,000 in dental school debt and spend your first 4 years as a high-production associate, deliberately building speed and a loyal patient base while making standard loan payments and saving aggressively, banking roughly $25,000 a year. By year 4, you've paid down a meaningful chunk of principal and built real savings. You then acquire a modest, well-priced existing practice for $550,000 with a healthy existing patient base, financing it carefully with a manageable debt service relative to the practice's proven collections. By your early 40s, the practice is generating strong owner income. Your combined debt is manageable relative to your net worth, and you've built genuine equity in an asset you can eventually sell. Scenario 2, the realistic over-leveraged outcome. You graduate with $340,000 in debt and, eager to skip the associate phase entirely, immediately purchase a practice for $950,000 in your first year out of school, financing the full amount. Combined monthly debt service across both loans exceeds $9,000 before you've paid a single staff salary or dollar of overhead. The practice's existing patient base doesn't transfer loyalty as smoothly as projected. Collections come in below the number the purchase price was based on, and by year 3 you're facing a genuine cash flow crisis, unable to comfortably cover payroll, equipment leases, and debt service simultaneously in the same month. Same degree. Same license. The only variable that changed was how much leverage you took on before you had a proven track record to support it. The scale of this profession is substantial and structurally shifting. According to the American Dental Association, there are approximately 200,000 practicing dentists in the United States, and DSO-affiliated practice share continues to grow year over year, according to the ADA's own health policy tracking, a trend reshaping what owning your own practice even means for a new graduate today. That's not a struggling profession, but it is one where the traditional image, the solo practitioner who graduates, opens a practice and builds a comfortable life, has become a genuinely riskier and more capital-intensive path than it was a generation ago, and where the dentists who come out ahead financially are disproportionately the ones who sequenced their debt, built production experience before taking on ownership risk, and understood the real overhead math before signing a practice acquisition loan. If you want to go deeper into how careers and business acquisitions like this actually get modeled and evaluated, there's a detailed guide linked in the description and pinned in the first comment. It walks through the frameworks behind everything in this video. Worth checking out. Behind every doctor on a dental office door is a debt load that rivals or exceeds medicines, a second capital investment most people never account for, and an overhead structure that quietly consumes more of every dollar collected than almost any other licensed profession. The income is real. So is everything financed to get there, and so is everything still being paid down long after the diploma's on the wall. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It genuinely helps this channel keep growing.